Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve. It's your boy, your homie, your YouTuber, your nerdy YouTuber, back with a secret, hidden Dark Souls 3 mod. I've been working on it for the last few days just because, I don't know, I got the itch to work on Dark Souls 3. Probably because I'm working on Bloodborne and they share so much of their rendering setup. Don't mind the tombstones flickering, that's my bad. I enabled shadow casting on them and they have issues with that essentially. But this mod, what you're seeing here, the only thing done by reshade is the anti-aliasing. I disabled the in-game anti-aliasing, which is a really crappy version of FXAA, and of course replaced it with the TAA done through reshade. But beyond that, this mod will add parallax occlusion mapping to any surface that can basically benefit from it. Dark Souls 3 had parallax occlusion mapping ready to go on a lot of surfaces, but they were never enabled. Similar to Bloodborne, there were a lot of surfaces, and for release, they just didn't enable it. And so I'll be doing that to as many surfaces as I can. I've modified the reflectance maps for the area, which I've also done in Bloodborne. Basically, this is all the stuff I've been doing on Bloodborne, but applied to Dark Souls 3 as well. And the reflectance maps essentially get pretty close to fixing the overly metallic look of Dark Souls 3. And then I ported the SSAO, so screen space ambient occlusion, I ported those settings from Armored Core 6 and then modified them a little bit. Because essentially they've been using the same SSAO like system and settings. They've just been tweaking it as they've been going along. And so, I basically just stole that. I was like, okay, cool. So you get more ambient occlusion and more accurate, basically. I've obviously enabled dynamic shadows for everything. And that's obviously that I included in my Embers mod, ages ago. But if I'm here modding, I have to do it. So I enable dynamic shadows. Hero lighting has been removed from the player and enemies. So now you and the enemies blend in to the environment. And obviously I've talked about that in Bloodborne videos, where basically your character just stands out versus everything else. And so I've removed that. Beyond that, while you're removing the hero lighting, you can also remove a ton of extra lights that basically just affect the environment, but they're not point lights. They're called like local lights, and they basically just kind of clog up the scene and give lighting to objects sort of unnaturally, but I'm assuming it was for indirect lighting or something, but basically I've disabled those. So the image looks a lot more cohesive and everything fits into the scene a lot better. So local lights, I removed a lot of those. We're actually going to go through the text file. I'll show you the text file that I end up going through line by line, and I'll show you all the additions that I make. And then there's exposure tweaks by enabling auto exposure, which was not used in the initial game. I have not totally figured out the auto exposure system, so basically you go into a dark area, it's darker, you go into a light area, and it adjusts. That's kind of the goal. I also removed any vignette that was active. Some of the maps had it, some didn't, but I have removed the vignette, so you're never going to have dark edges on your screen, so it's just a cleaner image. And then I disabled, thus far at least, I'm all the way up to Lothric Castle with the mod, so I actually have pretty good progress. And I've removed the color grading. The color grading is arguably like one of the biggest things that sapped the color out of Dark Souls 3. You can see in this map, it's not the most colorful, but this is one other change in this mod thus far, is I've actually gone through every texture in this map and levels adjusted the albedo texture for each one to bring out the natural colors. Now, this was shown in a DS3 mod video from me and showing off Trivia's work last year, way early last year. And so I did learn that from Trivia. Most of these things, frankly, I've learned from Trivia. She's brilliant, and she's helped me so much with Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. And so I do want to do that to the other maps. Thus far I've only done it to this map, but you can see there are normal colors that are standing out, but I think it still looks like Dark Souls 3, right? I've also adjusted the light map, where it uses the normal maps more so, and so you just get more detail on the surfaces and how they react to light, and that goes into the SSAO changes as well, because they actually have like a geometry bent that you can kind of do. And anyway, that was stolen from Armored Core 6. The other big thing is a change I made in my Embers mod, but now I'm doing it better, as per usual, which is the LOD swap-in of models. Dark Souls 3 is notorious for the closer you get to models, they basically pop and get more detailed the closer you get, which does make sense. However, we're in 2025, ain't nobody got time for that anymore, so I just disable that, and it will load the highest quality one for much greater distance to where you shouldn't notice that anymore. Bloodborne didn't really have a big issue with that, but Dark Souls 3 absolutely does, and it's constantly popping, and it's super annoying, so that's been fixed. And there's probably more things that I'm missing, but I wanted to go to some of the areas in the game. Here you can see, obviously, a slightly darker Firelink Shrine, but it's no longer like metallic shining everywhere. I've removed a lot of those extra lights, so now it's relying more on the candles for illumination and the wall torch and, you know, around the thrones. And you'll notice there's no more hero lighting on the Firekeeper and me, and everyone sits in the scene way better. I think it's moodier, but it still looks like Dark Souls 3. That's kind of my goal, is like, I don't want it to completely not look like Dark Souls 3. Now one of the... Ooh, actually, I can upgrade my weapon. I will say, I was playing Dark Souls 3 for like 3 or 4 hours yesterday. I was just playing. I mean, I was modding too, but like, I have to admit, like, you know, I have my criticisms of this game, obviously in the trilogy, but it does play really, really well. It's so much fun. I think the gameplay is probably the best part of it for me, in terms of like boss fights and just the combat. So that's basically Firelink Shrine. It's moodier, but I think I would just say it looks a lot better. I'm biased, but let's go to the other areas. Let's go to High Wall of Lothric, because I'm up to Lothric Castle. It doesn't actually take that long to do this. I mean, I was kind of going ham on it. The reflectance maps, you know, there's obviously like hundreds per map. Oh, get out of town. Now that I'm in Lothric Castle, this swapped over to the other version of the High Wall. Oh, I haven't seen this yet. But yeah, you can notice here, obviously, it's much more colorful. That's by disabling the color grading, which sapped most of the color from this area. And then I have a very light touch of like filmic contrast, but you can see the super increased detail on like the actual textures. I have not upscaled these textures yet. So these are actually the base textures. These haven't even been levels adjusted, but you can see there's a lot more contrast. And I think it honestly looks pretty awesome. I'm super happy with how this came out. This is my first time actually going to the modified version of High Wall. But yeah, now, I'm surprised I didn't, you know, talk about this at like the first minute of the video. But this is of course not using the Dark Souls 3 lighting engine, which has not come out yet. That is still in progress and beta testing, and these changes will work right alongside that. So that makes me feel better that like whatever changes I'm making now are not just going to be like super obsolete. Not all of these are technically required with DS3 lighting engine. It fixes some of these problems, but these should play perfectly fine with DS3 lighting engine. And if anything, will just look better with DS3 lighting engine. The reflectance map changes, the shadow casting, the parallax occlusion mapping, all of that. Dark Souls 3 lighting engine is going to be like, cool, great. But I kind of wanted to see how far could I push Dark Souls 3's engine, like rendering engine by default. And I think it would just be a good option to have a much more colorful Dark Souls 3, but I still feel like it looks like Dark Souls 3. I don't know, that's I think how all my projects go, is I don't necessarily want it to not at all look like, you know, the game that I'm modding, but can I improve on it a little bit? And I'd say thus far, absolutely yes. Loving how this looks. Like, it has a shitload of detail. It is colorful, but from what we can remember, Dark Souls 3 during development actually did have colors. It was not always desaturated. We actually have like alpha pictures of specifically this area, actually, among other areas, that actually had colors that popped, you know. So I feel better about that, in that it is part of the like origin story of Dark Souls 3. It did have colors at some point, and then they completely sapped them. Not that that doesn't make sense to sap them, but yeah, with the change in the point lights and the spotlights, I think the interiors look really pretty awesome with how they respond to the light from the point lights. I am adding some shadow casting to some lights. Like, you'll see this light here, you know, I have a shadow off the player. I've been changing some of them over to that, but not too many. Dark Souls 3 does have a shadow casting limit. It's higher than Dark Souls 2's limit, but I have run into it in Dark Souls 3 before, where it will basically turn off the dynamic shadows. It'll say, you've hit your limit, big deal. Another part of this mod is essentially to bring the advancements that FromSoft has made in their subsequent games, with Sekiro specifically being the giant one, Elden Ring, Armored Core, and basically their engine upgrades. I'd like to essentially backport that in a manual fashion to Dark Souls 3, because I'm already doing that to Bloodborne, and these are really just changes I made to Bloodborne for my PC Remaster mod. And I thought, well, it makes perfect sense to bring these to Dark Souls 3. I don't know why I wouldn't do that. So really, we're just kind of... Oh yeah, I need to add parallax to this surface. Parallax occlusion mapping is something that they supported, and as I've said many times prior, they just didn't care to use it in the final game, mostly, other than like 2 or 3 surfaces. I don't really know why. They just were not interested in parallax occlusion mapping for the most part, because now they basically just don't use it at all. At least in Elden Ring and Sekiro, I have not seen a usage of it yet. This is kind of crazy. This is my first time going to these areas with the dark sign. That's sick. It looks pretty fucking awesome. Okay, I dropped my... It's been 13 minutes, I dropped my first F-bomb. But yeah, we got the light shafts, and I think it's just a better looking Dark Souls 3. Now, one thing I've also been doing, you'll notice how this grass here actually looks like it doesn't fit in. That's because they actually apply a local light to the grass to keep it properly, I wouldn't say properly lit, but it looks weird if you remove that hero lighting from the grass. And I learned that the hard way, because I do know there's going to be people seeing this video that are going to be like, oh my god, how many mods does he work on? Couldn't he just finish one of them? And I totally understand where that's coming from. However, by working on this Dark Souls 3 mod, I figured out why the grass was too dark in my Bloodborne mod. And that has to do with the removing of hero lighting. Well, I removed the hero lighting from grass. I didn't even know that was a thing. And I went, well, shit, okay. And so I actually brought that back to my Bloodborne mod. That's how any of my mods have worked, is I go to mod something else, I learn something from it, I bring it back to my other projects, and like that's where I'm at. Like I can thank that sort of behavior for any modicum of success I've had is from doing that. I do understand it's frustrating for people who are fans, but they're kind of like, you know, it makes sense. God, this looks amazing. This really does. Let's get to the next bonfire, and then I'll show you the other areas, because I have not levels adjusted the albedo textures for basically any map except for the cemetery and Firelink Shrine, because that's pretty laborious. That's opening up every albedo texture. There's hundreds and hundreds per map, and it takes a while. And it brings out the natural contrast. But that's where I was curious, can I do the similar thing without having to adjust each of those? And it turns out the answer is yes. Realistically, you can disable the color grading, you can do exposure changes, and you can get about the same result. God, this looks insane. And really the goal is just a better looking Dark Souls 3. Now, is it going to be better looking to everybody? Well, I don't expect that, you know. I think that'd be a little ridiculous of me to just assume that. Also, this is the Tenchu outfit. I will throw that on. Okay, so let's travel to... Yeah, let's go to Road of Sacrifices. I guess the other thing I do on a case-by-case basis is adding more things to be reflected. Also, the game crashed. That's been happening occasionally, where it'll just crash on warping. I've never really had an issue with Dark Souls 3 crashing. But working on this mod, yeah, and I don't really know why. It's just kind of a thing that happens. So I'm just assuming that's a me problem. I've also had weird things where Dark Souls 3 will just run worse for a little bit. And then you like reload the game and it goes, oh, you're fine. Damn, look at this image. Shoot. Okay, let's see if we can warp. Usually reloading the game and it goes, oh, okay, cool, you're fine. I don't really know why, but yeah, luckily these changes to the G params have really helped every single area in this game. Okay, so Road of Sacrifices. Oh yeah, they really do all switch over to the Dark Sign version. I always forget that. This area actually looks pretty similar to the released game. It's just less metallic looking and like shiny. So you get the benefit of those reflectance map changes. But there's still colors, you know. Obviously, I think the biggest benefit of this mod is probably actively disabling the in-game anti-aliasing. And then turning on the TIA, because you get such a clearer image. And also all these areas are not like, I'm not showing like final results. So there's some cases where certain lights are too bright and I need to adjust their radius, right? So that is not like final. So don't expect any of this to be like super final mod progress work. But you know, a huge change is just the changing the LOD pop in for objects, because now you can actually play the game without seeing a million fucking changes. Wow, I didn't die? I kind of thought I would die on that. I would be real good. Oh, fuck. Okay. Let's run through here. I think this area looks pretty fucking awesome. Although there are those black things in the reflection. I'm not entirely sure what that is. If it's not, it might not be reflecting the sky. Sometimes they set it to not reflect the sky. This area is actually really weird because they have separate meshes for the reflections. Also, can we agree that the crabs are like the worst fucking, one of the worst fucking enemies in this game? Like, not even close. Also, you might hear my cat meowing a little bit. Really, this is just us walking around. I know there's going to be people in the comments going, you should really do before and afters. I'm like, yeah, those are more work. It's not to say I won't do it. Of course I will. But I wanted to just be like that nerdy, excited guy who just talks to you about what they did in the game. I promise we will pull up, after we go through a few more areas, I'm going to pull up the actual like text file, and you can see what I'm doing, and then I can pull up in Smith's box as well, so we can see the areas. So not every area is massively transformed, but really it's just a better... Oh, Estus Shard, get out of town! Okay, this is why we make these videos. Well, I don't need the titty shard anymore, but that's fine. Oh, yeah, look at that bad UV mapping. Ugh. Come on, Dark Souls 3. Honest to God, what are we doing? Anyone who's played Dark Souls 3 a lot will be like, Damn, okay. Yeah, this does look better. Not in every instance. It's not going to be like an across the board, oh my god, insane looking. Faen Swamp, I think, actually looks pretty normal. It does have a better, like, almost volumetric look to it in terms of the fog. I get lost in here, so I'm probably going to teleport out. Man, yeah, these rocks here need tessellation bad. They are low poly. Okay, actually these jumping guys that jump on your head and then they try to like shred your head, that annoyingly rhymed, they're also one of the worst enemies in the game. Okay, let's dark sign the hell out. Oh, okay. You know, I didn't want to throw hands, but I will. Of course, my cat, when I'm recording a video, he's going to be jumping in boxes. Oh, he's doing all of the annoying things. Okay, we've looked at Road of Sacrifices, Faen Swamp. Yeah, let's look at the Cleansing Chapel a little bit. Just get a nice little look-ski. Yeah, okay, Gale, you gotta chill out, big dog. Okay, so obviously we got our little Cathedral of the Deep. You can see the dynamic shadows moving. Don't worry about that. That's how dynamic shadows being added kind of screws with stuff. Oh, does this have the dark sign as well? Let's forget that. But once again, you notice more natural colors. Still, I mean, it obviously still looks like the area that you remember, but it just looks a little bit better. Way clearer. I think clarity is probably also the other big part of this mod, is just changing those settings in the G-param really affects how the image is actually displayed, because by default it's so, like, unfocused. Whoa! Okay. Let's be nice. Let's be nice. Let's be nice. Let's be cool. Oh my god, I did put the ladder down. You'll love to see it. It's also been some months between my last Dark Souls 3 playthrough, so it's been long enough that, like, I'm enjoying just playing it as well. But yeah, you get some nice ambient occlusion indoors. That is a nice boost. Okay, let's go upstairs. Oh, man, I think I was just speed running through these areas. Did I get, oh my god, not these guys. These are also on the list of, like, annoying enemies. Oh, I didn't get that undead bone shard? No shot. Damn, okay. I was not getting a whole lot of objects here, was I? Yeah, repair powder, sweet. Yeah, the new dynamic shadows, you can see those. Oh, I forgot to make friends with the big guy. That's bad. You can probably also hear my controller being absolutely demolished right now. Don't worry about it. I will timestamp when I start looking into Smithbox and the text file, because I'm pretty sure that's where people are like, that's what I'm more curious about. It's like, yeah, that's fair. I respect that. Okay, so pretty normal. Oh my god, I almost fell. So of course, once again, it's less metallic, modified reflectance maps for all things, and just better anti-aliasing. Since before, you could barely even call what Dark Souls 3 was using, and Bloodborne, you could barely even call that anti-aliasing. That was literally just like barfing all over the image, and it didn't even really anti-alias that well. It was awful. It's one of the worst visual aspects of Bloodborne and DS3. So actually having a 1440p experience with Dark Souls 3 and being able to see everything and not have aliasing out the ass, it's kind of weird. It's taken some getting used to, because I'm like, damn, this just looks really good. This just really pops on my screen, and that's what I've always wanted with Dark Souls 3. Now this room is an example where I need to adjust the light source that's up there. It's essentially too bright, and so the whole room is just basically visible when I do want it to be a little bit darker. So that's one of my changes that I'll have to manually go in and fix. Yeah, Catacombs of Causus, actually. I do have a side-by-side image that I will show on screen right now, editor from SoftServe, and that will show a before and after. So I do have some before and afters. But big thing you see in Catacombs of Causus is the removal of all that extra weird light that was on walls and shit. And obviously the reflectance map, it's the same change I'm doing to each map, and I think it just now looks way more atmospheric. Ooh, titty shard, large titty shard. Oh, large titty shard. Oh, that's the ball. That's the ball. We hate to see it. Now these little blue point lights that are here. Oh shit, my ass. See, now I'm able to curse. It's great. I don't have my HUD on. Didn't need it. I freaking shredded them. Absolutely demolished them. Ooh, ember. But yeah, I think that this interior actually looks pretty incredible. It's just bringing out the quality that Dark Souls 3 already had. Oh wow, I don't think I've ever dodged him that way before. Yeah, this looks so much fucking better. I'm so biased, but I don't even care. I'm gonna say it. This looks so much better. This looks like we're in Elden Ring. We're not quite there yet. Their material quality is higher than mine because obviously they designed it from the ground up. But that's essentially what I'm doing with the reflectance maps. You're just trying to get it to look closer to. Oh my god, that's what the bonfire is on the other side. Is there a ball that comes down here? Oh, I know. Yeah, there is a ball. Oh my god, that was close. Okay. Oh, ember. Okay, ball's gonna come back up, but I will not be here for when the ball comes up. There's no reason to stick around for that. Oh my god. Yeah, I think the auto exposure system also helps with the interiors just being way more atmospheric. I don't think I can actually go anywhere from here. Also, yes, you can see me doing a basic bitch build, which is the Claymore, because I basically just want to make it through the game, because I don't actually have a late game save file. Because Dark Souls 3, for whatever reason, in 2025, the year of our Lord, does not support Steam Cloud Save. It's insane. Can we talk about that? What the fuck's going on there? But I figured giving raw gameplay, yes, raw, Monday Night Raw gameplay, I feel like is usually the best idea for showing off a mod. Let's see if we have another crash. That'd be wild. Okay, so now we got the Catacombs of Causus, which I fucking hate, but this time it was actually pretty easy. Yeah, let's go to Central Irithyll. Irithyll, to be fair, already looked really awesome. Irithyll and Anorlando. I think they already look pretty fucking great. But now they just, once again, they get the nice material updates and the dynamic shadows. And no aliasing out the ass. Oh my... You can see I'm really bad at picking up souls, obviously. Now the fog difference between this, that'll be fixed in DS3 lighting engine. The way that like the fog is there and then the sky has none of it, which is really weird. But that height difference will be fixed in DS3 lighting engine. Just think of these as like the under the hood kind of like material changes that will then benefit even more when Dark Souls 3 lighting engine comes around. Yeah, that little sky part looks not great, but everything else, there's such a good sharpness. That's what I love about FromSoft's built-in engine. Also, that spotlight is a little too bright. But it kind of looks a little sick, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this mod, the future things also, I'd love to just, the goal is to levels adjust each albedo texture to bring out the natural colors even more. And that is in preparation for obviously upscaling them. But importantly, saving that as BC7 texture compression, as Dark Souls 3 is obviously a DirectX 11 game, and thus supports BC7 texture compression, the modern standard, natively. It did not use it all the time. In fact, most of the time it did not. Really annoying. So basically I'll be doing that when I upscale, and then I save it and I lock in that extra detail. It's the same thing I'm doing to Dark Souls 1 with Dark Souls Remastered. Now down here you can actually see a really interesting case of them using parallax occlusion mapping in the game actually, and it's on this little cobble surface. You can see that each cobblestone protrudes from the ground, and that is actually parallax occlusion mapping. It's a very cool, like, small usage of it, but basically imagine this applied to a lot more of the surfaces, like this brick wall, and there's so many height maps that were ready to go that just ended up not being used. Also, this wall, I believe, is actually from Bloodborne. But yeah, this mod getting texture upgrades will only make it even better. Beyond that, I'm also fixing, like you can see this chest up here is set to the wrong lighting ID. That's common of most chests and certain objects in Dark Souls 3. There's some where they're just aligned to the wrong lighting ID. Okay, well, fuck you. I'm trying to make a video, okay? And that should fix any of those. You'll notice those upon close inspection of most areas in Dark Souls 3. So as I go, I'm also fixing that. And let's go down here. But essentially this mod, I would just like to bring it closer to the games that we already have out. Sekiro and Elden Ring and Armored Core in terms of their visual makeup, at least as close as I can. Dark Souls 3 lighting engine arguably will just bring it beyond that. And that'll be even sicker. Let's go to the Irithil dungeon. That place actually looks pretty fucking sick. Let's go do that. Let's go down here. Oh yeah, this room looks fucking insane. Like, look at this room now. Oh man, look at all this detail you can see. And all the specularity and the light bouncing. And oh, it's so good. This is such a good looking room, especially with these graphical changes. There's just so much that was being lost to the way that they were processing the image. Yeah, it looks so good in this area. Because, like, this is where you still have specularity, but it doesn't as much look like, oh, it's metallic. No, it still looks like stone, but wet stone, which is what it's supposed to look like. Okay, there's going to be a bad lighting change up here where the shadows are moving. Don't worry about it. That was in the base game. That's just how it works. Oh, yeah, let's go Irithil Dungeon. It's so sick. I hate this map. I fucking hate this map, but it looks insane with these lighting changes. Oh my god. The ambient occlusion is really shining in this fucking area. But there's just such clarity to the image now. I've said it a million times. If anyone's still watching this. Okay, after this, let's go to the bonfire. Let's see if there's one more area to go. And then I'll pop into Smith Box. And I will show you how the sausage is made. Also, I didn't even get that shortcut. Didn't need it. Bypassed the shit out of that guy. Actually, yeah, okay. The Devourer of Gods bonfire, the Aldrich, which I fucking hate him as well. That room looks insane. To be fair, it already looked insane, but now it just looks more insane. Like, look at this fucking room. Look at these light shafts. Oh my god. Look at this. It's nutty. It's fucking nutty, chat. Look at the light coming from outside. Look at the subtle specular. Oh, I feel like I'm just unlocking Dark Souls 3's potential. As it always had potential, it's just the way that they had the renderer set up. And I think they were really struggling with moving to a physically based rendering setup. Like, they just struggled mightily. The only time they actually figured it out was Sekiro. Oh my, dude, from the top rope, and you still missed, but you know. Oh yeah, let's go down here, because I actually have examples. of parallax occlusion mapping that I enabled. Do I have to lower this? I do have to lower this. Yes, I have to lower it. Although I can talk to Yorshka. I've not talked to her yet. Okay, so let's... Oh, doesn't move? Okay, other side? Other side. Okay, we nailed it. Don't worry about it. Yeah, let's go. Oh yeah, I love the shadows moving. It's so good. Such a peak moment. Fan service, yes, but it's pretty good fan service, all things considered. All right, let's go down here. And yeah, so we can see it on this floor that these tiles, you'll now notice that there's basically certain tiles that are pushed down, some are higher than others, and that is parallax occlusion mapping. Before it was completely and utterly flat, and now you actually have imperfections, and there's, you know, higher and lower, and then you have this wall here. We actually have the bricks protruding out of the wall. I need to adjust the height map a little bit. As you can tell, there's that blurring on the edges because that's like completely new depth that it's creating. But that's once again a height map that FromSoft created. They just ended up not using. So I ended up enabling parallax occlusion mapping easily in the model on the floor, the little stairs here. And then if we go in this room here, which this room I think actually looks pretty sick as well, we actually have this wall here, which I do have a before and after picture that editor from SoftServe. I need you to show this. I have a before and after of this wall where it's mostly flat beforehand, but now you have depth. I need to adjust the height map. It's a little too severe, but you get the sense of like all the depth that it's adding purely from the height map, which is stored inside the normal map. In the alpha channel. This tile now has all these imperfections and higher and lower versus before where it was flat. I mean, it had a normal map, but you know what I mean. It's missing that extra depth. Oh man, it's so cool looking. Now you'll notice some light leaking through. That is from enabling the dynamic shadows, removing the hero lighting and the player mask, and so that's why you'll see sometimes the light is reaching through these walls when it obviously shouldn't be. That I can fix by changing the back face culling of the model itself, because it was not set up to have shadows basically being cast onto those objects. They were just not set up for that, so that I can very easily adjust. But yeah, let's hop into Smithbox and the text files that I'm editing for each area. Like, this room looks fucking insane. Are you kidding me right now? Look at this. Look at this light. Look at it bouncing off the floor here. Look at that specular. Oh, it's so good. I'm so fucking also the shadows are a little too dark. That's gonna be hard to edit because the way they're stored, if you override them, it freaks out. It's a whole thing. Don't worry about it. Also, look at those low quality textures. Ooh. Big part of the mod as well in the future will be, we already have a texture mod, but I'd like to do a 2025, texture upscale myself versus the texture improvement mod we already have for Dark Souls 3. But, we'll see. We'll see. We're cooking. Yeah, let's bring up Smithbox and the text file. Okay, we're back, and we're in the high wall of Lothric map. And this is where you can kind of fly around. You see the spotlights, that you can actually see a physical representation of where the light is meant to go. And we have point lights. We have map pieces, which we can move up and down and all kinds of cool stuff. And foliage, and we have enemies. Yeah, basically you can see everything in this. So what I do to quickly enable shadow casting, because you can actually do it pretty quickly, you basically go into the parts map pieces, and then what I do is I tend to, if you look at the highest numbers here, once you go into the 8,000s and 9,000s or 900,000s, those tend to be like LOD objects or, you know, like distant things. So I don't want to mess with those, but I do tend to pick all the way up to like the, you know, 101,884, depends on each map. But basically then you can go here, point light, shadow source, shadow destination. This is also where you could make them show up in reflections. If there was something that was actually using a planar reflection, you could actually add things to the reflection camera, as they call it, in Dark Souls 3. And yeah, so that's basically where you do that. And then when you pick all of them, you can also, the LOD param ID. I went into the param editor, and there is a param, quite literally called LOD param. And the cool thing is you can actually see different ones for PS4 and Xbox One. They actually have the params in here for that. But by default, it uses 0, and then it uses a lot of different ones. But basically, it's based on border distance, play distance. And I found one that generally dumped the border distance to like 9998, and the texture LOD was set to 0 versus 1. So I found out that was a better thing for textures. And yeah, so basically I just swap over to like 61, and I say, just stop doing that. Stop deforming and popping in all these new models. It's 2025, the year of our Lord. It's almost the 10th year anniversary of DS3. We can render these models at full quality. We don't really need to be doing that anymore. And so that's one thing. And then beyond that, we do that also for objects. So bonfires, corpse, trees, well, not sometimes trees, but barrels, boxes, and you can basically select all of them, and then you set them as shadow source, point light source. Point light source, you don't need to do. The point light source will be for obviously a point light or a spotlight. That can control if it gets a shadow cast from that. So when they say shadow source and shadow destination, they mean sun shadows. Or like moon shadows, essentially whatever the main light source is. And so you can change those. We don't need to mess with the player one. And then enemies also can do LODs to where you'll actually have a lower quality version of the enemy at a distance. So I also turned that off because I'm like, we can just render the whole guy, the main guy. Don't worry about it. So we also have that going on. And then the lights. Now here, High Wall of Lothric actually has 3 different lighting setups for depending on the time in the game. Because there's obviously the Dark Sign version, the regular version, and I guess there's a 3rd version. I don't know. There's 3 of them, but I can't say I know Dark Souls 3 as well as I do like Dark Souls 1. But essentially you can pick all of the lights for one of them, and I changed the sharpness on it, which I never knew what the sharpness meant, but apparently that controls... Well, once again, Trivia could explain all of these better than I would, but you're stuck with me. And the sharpness essentially like controls the fall off of light from point lights. So this also controls the direct light. And essentially, you just get a better result from your point lights. I might need to adjust the sizing of these point lights because now they're a little bit more potent with how they affect the environment. And so I might need to compensate by lowering their radius a little bit. So that is sort of like a need-be basis. And I do it for the other lights. And anyway, you save that. And I have it in my DS3 mod folder. And that's where you can save lighting changes, map changes. And then I obviously apply it to the game. The actual mod, when I release it, or release probably an earlier version to incentivize me to keep, like working on it really quickly, would be done like through mod engines. So you don't have to like actually adjust your own files. But then again, you could just install it either way. Because I think with mod engine, you can't play online, right? And so if I release it the other way, it still would be a little risky for online, but like, you could if you want, basically. Now, the other thing we're doing is draw param changes. This is the bigger one out of the 2 things that we're doing. So basically on your map here, High Wall of Lothric is M30000000, and we actually go into our game folder, param folder, draw param. Bloodborne has draw params, Elden Ring has draw params, Sekiro has draw params. Basically, they're an evolution, it seems, of the filter params from Dark Souls 2. And they basically unified all of the like graphic settings into one XML document. So 3001 is for Lothar Castle. We want 30.0.0.0.0.0. So basically we open that up. And yes, I am opening it in Notepad. I should open it in, I have Notepad++, which is obviously superior and with syntax and all that stuff. But honestly, I find Notepad to be perfectly like okay. Also, it has like a built-in dark mode, which is kind of sick. Shout out Microsoft for small updates to your Notepad. Also, tabs was added to Notepad, so like it got a little bit more useful. Oh my god, I've been recording for a long time now. Anyway, so we flip through here. They start with the directional light, which is like the main lighting in the scene, and it's not point lights, whatnot. Directional light sharpness. So this is once again sharpness, which adjusts the fall off, and so I change all of those to 1000. Go screw it. Directional light SSAO based on that. I'm thinking of disabling this because it's like sun based AO and it can be kind of messy, so I'm looking into that. But anyway, I pump it up to 1. It ranges from 0 to 1, so 0.7 is 70%, however you want to think of that. We have angles, we have diff color. I don't really mess with that, and then I don't mess with the other directional lights really. I kind of just, for now, I've been messing with the main one. And then we actually go down to our GI occlusion rate. So I found this one on certain maps, Bloodborne more so, they would actually have the GI occlusion rate turned on to either 0.5 or 0.3 or 0.7, or some had it on 1. And it seems like that tamps down on, obviously it says GI occlusion, so global illumination occlusion. So I think it was trying to tamp down on illumination that comes from things. So basically, I learned with the Bloodborne DLC that the best setting was to have it at 0. So I just flipped it, boom, 0 all the way across. And then we have local light. So the local lights is how they do hero lighting, partially. There's a couple ways, but this is the main thing, that it's a light that just impacts you and the enemies. And they do it based on the different IDs here. And so I basically turn that to false. I keep it true for like grass and certain things. I have learned that, although actually here, I'm actually doing it on a lot more. I think I forgot to edit these. So while I'm here, let's do a little control paste, because these are all extra lights that I don't need for some of these higher IDs, which end up being used on like distant objects. And yeah, let's hit that. So true, false, false, true, false. Okay. And then they have also another one, where they end up doing a second local light, presumably from a different angle, and it has its own settings. And so anyway, I go through and I just disable that. And it really brings the scene together. False, 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 true. And then light mask influence. So this is how they handled having, so you have baked shadows, right? That's how the game functions. It doesn't have dynamic shadows on most things. It's only in Sekiro that everything had a dynamic shadow. Everything was shadowed, and it just handled it. But here, the light mask basically would handle where your character would walk into a dark area that is shadowed, but it's shadowed by baked shadows. So they're not actually being cast on the character, therefore your character doesn't get dark by an actual dynamic shadow. So the light mask controls, you walk in there, it tells the game, make the character dark, and then your character would become full dark. Now, this is from 0 to 1, so you can actually like toggle it to be like 70% dark, not 100% dark. And so I tend to turn it to 0 because now I'm doing dynamic shadows. The character can be dark because there are actually shadows cast. I don't need to worry about that anymore. And it also just makes, because it's not all or nothing, but with the light mask, you can't get like shadows being cast and moving on your character. So now it looks a lot more realistic. Fog, I don't tend to change yet. I haven't really gotten into that. Environment map ID, I don't really mess with. Color scale is the like scale of using the baked lighting, from what I understand, because it's the environment map. and it's from 0 to 1, and you could obviously go 0.5 if you want to sap some of the color or whatever. By default in DS3, it seems like most are set at 1. Bloodborne had a lot that were like at 0.8, so they would take like 20% off the power, so that's something you can mess with. Here's the SSAO I actually copied from Armored Core 6, and then I just adjusted the actual like AO scale, because it's kind of from 0 to 1, but you can actually go over that into like, what if it was 130%? So it was 1.3. And then they have enable upscale, prevent ghost, use reprojection, use the normal map. So a lot of this was enabled by default, except for prevent ghost, upscaling, and so there's some difference there. And then the geom bent offset, I still need to play with that number a little bit better. Now, by default, a lot of these G-params don't actually list their true values. Also, you can tell it's from Armored Core 6 because it says time of day, and it doesn't. DS3 doesn't even know what that means because it doesn't have like a time of day system, but Armored Core 6 does. So that's how you can tell I copied it from Armored Core 6. Now, here's how a lot of the things are in the actual G-params. You'll see they don't actually have the values. They basically just say, oh yeah, here's this line, and then it's referencing presumably the default G-param, but even then I haven't noticed that to be the case. So it's somewhere saving these. But if you want to override this, you can copy it from a different G-param from somewhere else, because they've been using a similar syntax and settings for a long time. So basically, I can copy this from somewhere else where it does have the settings, and then I can go in and modify them. Tone map, that's a big one where we have the auto exposure system we do enable. Once again, I don't fully understand this yet between the minimum and max exposure versus just a set exposure. Now, in future games, they ended up moving away from Yebus for their exposure system, and they moved down to what says here GS Presents. That seems to be another system that was seemingly not used in this, at least from what I can tell, this and Bloodborne, because this also has auto exposure, light adapt, but it's a different system and how it works and different values. And I can't tell exactly how that's functioning, but they moved with Armored Core and I think Elden Ring, they moved over to this GS Presents for some of their tone mapping. But Yebus does most of their stuff. But for almost all of it, there is this GS Presents. So I don't know how I would swap over to that, how that works. I don't know, because you can see here GS Presents Bloom Enable is set to 0 for off, and the Yebus is turned on. And a lot of it was designed around Yebus, so I don't 100% know. Now, the depth of field settings, you can see here, once again, it doesn't show us the values. So those are stored elsewhere. Who knows where? I have not figured it out yet. Because it's obvious that it's not taking it from the default G-parent, because that's static. That's a static document that I can edit, but like that doesn't seem to work. So it's storing these somewhere. Bloodborne doesn't do this. Bloodborne just shows the values in the document for every map, and you can just see it. You'll notice here I copied in the anti-alias editor from a different G-param so I could edit it, and basically I just disable it. So I don't have it anti-alias at all because it's the dog shit FXAA, because I don't want anything interfering with the temporal anti-aliasing I'm enabling through reshade, and so basically I just yoink, disable that. Here you can see I've actually essentially disabled the color grading by selecting LUT source 0. Each map had multiple color grades. I'm not entirely sure if there were just certain color grades they didn't end up going with. I've looked at different ones, but from working on this, I've essentially found disabling the color grading seems to be the best shot. Now here's the shadow param, which is actually really funny. The first line here doesn't have the S, and that's how it's supposed to be. It's really odd. I do need to adjust this at some point for maps because some of the dynamic shadows are too dark. Because they were not designed to be on the whole map like Sekiro and Elden Ring. Those had dynamic shadows for the whole map. Because they had a time of day system, they had to have dynamic shadows, but they were made with that like in mind. And here they're not. Here's the problem. So you can tell they don't have the actual values for shadow color, which I need to adjust. Blur count, like there's a lot of things in here I need to adjust, but I can't. if I copy in, like, let's say I wanted to change the blur count, because obviously in another GParam, I could see, actually, if we go into Armored Core, so if we go into Armored Core Fires of Rubicon, which if you haven't played it yet, you need to play it. We can go into the game folder, draw a param, and you can actually see the default draw param. So this is just the default one Armored Core 6 has, is like a placeholder. And you can actually go to the shadow param, and you'll notice it's almost identical in terms of its layout to Dark Souls 3 Bloodborne, even with missing that first S in shadow param. You'll notice it just says time of day, where obviously here it does not. So you can actually copy this wholesale over into this document, and you can use these settings. And then adjust them to your own case. But the problem is where the shadows are being cast, like the angle. This is like the most important here, is shadow angle. So in this map here, M30, which is the high wall of Lothric, the problem is I don't know that angle. And figuring it out is not fun, because you need the dynamic shadows to line up with the baked light map, right? Which already has shadows. And because if you have them completely not matching, which is what happens when I turn this off, it looks really zany and weird, and they're stretched out. So this is something that it's a bit of a pain point for me. It's a lot easier in Bloodborne, where they just list all of their features. Now, AO fields, I don't actually know if this exists. Oh, it does. So we have AO fields. Yeah, but even in Armored Core 6, you'll see it's not even mentioning it. Because here it says enable draw, upscale, global strength. I don't know what this is yet. We have 3D textures, sphere occluder, like sea wave. There's some extra settings in here I still have not fully messed with. We have a snow editor, glow, color paraffin filter, GS lens simulation. There's all kinds of little extra things here. Cloud shadow, I don't know. And then obviously you have all these unknown values, which there's just a shitload of unknown values that we just don't know what they do. At least so far, I don't know what those do. But anyway, that's a lot of the tweaking that I'm doing to Dark Souls 3. And I'm actually having fun because I'm playing through the game at the same time because I don't have a save file. This video is way longer than I thought it was going to be, which is obviously, no shit. Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Is this what you guys want? I remember the last time I did a Dark Souls 3 mod preview thing of Trivia's mod, it popped the fuck off. People were like, are you kidding me? We want this right now. And it didn't happen for a variety of reasons. But yeah, so look forward to this. I want to keep making videos on this and all my other projects. I have a Patreon that the support on Patreon's been insane. So if that's the best way to support, is either that or Ko-Fi donations. Watching is also totally cool. And you can also subscribe through YouTube, so you don't even have to go to Patreon. You can just do a $5 tier on YouTube, and then you get ad-free versions of the videos. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.